There is a devout, loyal group of people that still daily drive a phone that's over 7 years old, not only because of its timeless design, ahead of the curve cameras, and low price point, but because it offers things that very few other devices do in this boring smartphone landscape. There's a lot to cover here because I'm genuinely surprised by a lot of it. But before that guys, I'm really trying to hit 100,000 subscribers, so if you wouldn't mind hitting that button, it would genuinely mean the absolute world to me. Thank you so much. This is the now legendary LG V30, a phone whose subreddit has a whopping 8,000 members, whose hardware and software features are greatly sought after by enthusiasts, and a phone that I was genuinely really excited about when new, way back in 2017. The reason people tend to hold on to these things is that you have a modern looking device that feels great in the hand, made of high quality materials, but that also carries microSD expansion for easy file transfer, and of course the ability to expand that storage, which is something we really don't see in 2024. But it also has one of, if not the, best headphone ports ever put on a smartphone. This isn't what you'll find on your Galaxy Note 9, Pocophone F1 or Pixel 4a. No, this is a proper quad DAC backed port that can not only detect the impedance of whatever you plug into it and adjust the power output accordingly, which means I'm able to run my single dynamic IEMs all the way up to my HD 600s with absolutely zero issue, but the quality on offer here is just out of this world. One Carlos Bagnell ran proper hardcore tests on this thing way back when, and it was reliably and consistently able to compete with an expensive dedicated audio player, decimating Samsung and OnePlus headphone ports in the process. I repeat, this is not just another headphone port. Many of the people buying and still using these so far after its release are actually repurposing them as DAPs or digital audio players, and that's an absolutely fair thing to do, given that when you combine said headphone port with the microSD card slot, you have a well set up package that can also be permanently connected to the internet via 4G, LTE or Wi-Fi. The V30 has way more granularity when it comes to volume adjustment than most phones on the market. It has balance adjustments with the native settings menu, with EQ presets, sound presets, and even digital filters that can change the soundstage and the imaging characteristics. I personally wouldn't bother with the 3D surround feature, but that's also here if you want that as well. And it's not just options and settings. I have spent the last week plugging in my various different IEMs, in fact, basically trying out my entire collection and over-ears as well on this bad boy, and I have absolutely fallen in love with how this thing sounds. £60. I'm actually keeping this device for myself as my new audio player. £60 for this? It's superb. There is something I was pretty shocked to learn about with this device. I bought it secondhand, as the aforementioned £60 price tag, and I thought it was an absolute bargain. But not having known this device or where it came from, when I turned it on I was greeted by some Korean menus, even in the English interface, and I was intrigued. I also didn't realise it was Korean because I can't read Korean, so I used Google Gemini to find that out, but there we go. I learned that in certain countries, such as Korea, there is no way of disabling the camera shutter sound. So even when the phone is in do not disturb and silent mode, there is no way to turn that noise off. This is so that freaks can't go snapping pervy photos, and I think that's a fantastic idea. I had no idea this rule or legislation was even a thing, but my Korean V30 now makes this wonderful noise whenever I take a photo. Speaking of, the V30's cameras are a trio of pretty interesting hardware. We have a 16 megapixel main, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and 5 megapixel selfie shooter. And to be honest, it's a pretty decent little camera system in 2024, as long as the light is half good. The actual results you can get from these are solid with decent dynamic range, relatively accurate colours, and decent white balance and exposure balancing. The sensors aren't very big though, so actually they come in marginally smaller than anything Google has put in a Pixel phone, even the first generation. So you will notice a big quality drop off in low light and with moving subjects, but there are heaps of different modes to choose from, including log video recording mode. Though good luck finding the correct Rec 709 conversion LUTs on the LG site, that's going to be one for the subreddit, I reckon. The photo taking experience is a slightly different kettle of fish with the aforementioned locked shutter sound, and the now outdated way to switch lenses that is quite ergonomically flawed compared to the standard that pretty much every smartphone has these days. It's one of those software quirks that actually helped LG on its way down the pecking order, but that's not even the quirkiest thing about this phone. It only received updates to Android 9.0, which is a bit of a shame, and there are people out there who are installing custom ROMs to get it up to the newest version possible, which is ace. I love the Android community able to keep older phones alive, so props to those people. But the software skin itself here is pretty different to what you might be used to if you used other versions of 9.0. I personally like the tweaks made in the menus and the aesthetic, and of course being 6 generations out of date, it does definitely have its limitations. Thankfully, if you're only buying one as a DAP, then you shouldn't need the latest and greatest software. If you're not relying on a high quality local FLAC library, firstly, what are you doing? But if you do need to use Spotify, that is still fully supported by this phone natively, so that's an option too. The phone is still totally usable in 2024. Your unit might need a new battery, I think this one does, but they aren't mega expensive to replace or get done in your local phone repair shop, so for the crazy low price that this is, it might actually be worth going for. Now, there are a few different models of V30 out there, and this was confusing me when I first started researching these things. The V30 is what I have here. The V30 Plus is the same, but with double the internal storage, so instead of 64, it's 128. And then there's the V30S ThinQ, which from what I can work out is a V30 Plus, but with some tweaked software for AI capabilities. And can we please take a second to appreciate how nice this hardware is? It feels super light. It's actually 32% lighter than the S24 Ultra, and thanks to the curved sides that I still love by the way, it's so easy to hold and way easier to get in your pocket than the S24 Ultra as well. I was always quite fond of the chin and forehead that this thing had, very similar to the Galaxy S9 series, and latterly the Sony Xperias also had a very similar approach. I don't mind the thin bezels and the punch hole that we have today, but I do like the way that this is completely uninterrupted, which is always my preference. Also, look, a rear fingerprint scanner, but it's also the lock and power button. There's nothing on that right side, that is the button on the back. It's actually one of the things I really liked about the LG G and V series phones from back in the day. And the separate volume buttons, they're fantastic too, but not as cool as the original ones that were also on the back next to that power button. I also really like having the headphone port on the top of the phone. Not sure why I like this, but it's how I am. When I started making these tech videos way back in 2014, I absolutely loved LG's quirky phones and the company's domestic rivalry with Samsung. Great competition spawns not only excellent products, but innovation and better options for us consumers. LG was the king of making devices with useful and meaningfully different features, not just slapping stuff on the phone for the sake of it. They even made the triple camera setup that we all use today, and they made the wonderful headphone port on a phone that everyone could use. There's a sharp correlation in Huawei and LG's exits and then the drop off in smartphone innovation in my opinion. The V30 has every right to be a legend in the smartphone world. I am so sad that the company stopped making phones, which as a result has created a bit of a lull in innovation. This thing was fantastic, and it's great to see proper enthusiasts still holding on to one of these in 2024. Someone has to make a follow-up to the LG phone with a cult following.